So I'm very excited to be here, and as Sahara mentioned, I'm celebrating my 25th reunion from my MBA program. And a little hard to imagine, but it's also my 44th undergraduate reunion. So I'd like to share with you why I think Haas has really been instrumental in my career. You know, as Sahara mentioned, after graduating as an undergrad, I went on to law school here at Berkeley, and I practiced for many years in private practice, and then I moved in-house. And when I moved in-house, I found I was often working very closely with the business people, and I really wanted to know much more about decision-making. And many years had actually passed since I had come here as an undergrad. And so that really made me think, let me go back and get my MBA. It'll really make me much more of a peer and help me really understand what goes behind some of the factors that the business people were using in their decision making. And so I decided to come back here and get my MBA. It was great because it was also a change. I did my undergrad at Barrows, and I had a chance to come back here and do my MBA at this campus. And as you can imagine, it's almost like night and day, even though it's just a few yards apart actually from each other. And I think having my MBA really led me to this opportunity where I got to lead a new business group, and I moved from the legal side to the business side. And I had, chances at global companies like both Visa and Accenture to work globally, but because I had my MBA, I was able to do this on the business side. And I also think that it helped me land my current role as the general counsel of Varro because I have both a business degree and a legal degree. And, at Varro, we became the first all-digital national bank in the U.S., and I've joined the executive team there, and again, having that business and law degree has really helped. And so I will say, so much of the world continues to evolve, and it's so important to continue your education. And it's really, one of our defining principles of being student always. And so whether you come back and get an MBA, or if you've got an MBA, whether you come back, the other thing I would say is the Berkeley's executive education program is fantastic. It's a great way of continuing to take classes, to really continue kind of learning and the skills. And after I graduated from my MBA, I got very involved with the alumni program. And Dean is here, and he got me involved with the Alumni Council. So I first started being involved with the East Bay Alumni Chapter, and then I went on to the Alumni Council. And it also introduced me to so many more people at Berkeley and allowed me to keep in contact with things that were going on at the school that I joined the Berkeley Executive Education Board. And that's really where I began to learn the importance of executive education. And you have chances to take classes with people from across the globe. You have chances for having them create tailored programs for your companies. So, and having that opportunity at the Executive Education Board was great. It also gave me a chance to get to know Anne, and I joined the Haas board about a year ago. And I've really come to enjoy working with Anne and impressed how she continues to advance the school. The school has continued to advance its degree programs. I'm sure many of you know that it now has a flex option for the MBA program. And I'm sure Anne can talk more about that. But she has also led a major diversity program and inclusion and has really broadened the Haas faculty and the Haas student body to be more diverse. And I think the other important thing is all of us know how important climate change is. And Anne has also brought sustainability into the forefront here at the school and woven it into the curriculum with both entrepreneurship and innovation. But I think all of us, it's so important that we give back to the school monetarily. And I think Anne has also done a great job of really increasing the fundraising efforts across the school. And I think now with the speaker gift that will allow us to expand the undergraduate program to a four-year program, that has really been wonderful. And so now Anne has been appointed to a second term, and so it'd be great to hear more from Anne about her plans for her second term. So maybe one of the first questions I will ask Anne is really, what are the highlights from your first term?
Thank you, Marina. And as you can see and hear, it's so wonderful to have Marina here, our new Haas board member, doing this fireside chat. Welcome, all of you. We're so happy to see you here for this weekend reunion. So I'd say probably the biggest highlight is I'm a Californian. I'm a Berkeley grad, undergraduate, around the same era as you. We won't give exact numbers. I mean, being one of the leaders of the greatest public university in the world has just been an incredible experience. So that has been incredible. We are at the center of innovation. We're at the center of what's next. And I really, truly believe, having been to so many campuses, not just in the United States, all over the world, this is the most beautiful campus I have ever walked the grounds of. I just love this campus. But let me be a little bit more specific about some highlights. When I first was approached, I was a professor at Wharton, and I got this cold call about coming back to my alma mater, and I just couldn't believe it. I was so excited. I started looking into, what are the challenges of the Haas School, and I decided the Haas School is too small. The endowment was too small. The number of faculty, especially latter faculty, was too small. We could grow. The student body is small and had room also to grow. And I really focused on the endowment and on the faculty. So for me, one of the highlights is I have been able to grow the latter faculty quite a lot. Sadly, the rest of this university, the latter faculty has not grown in over 40 years, while the student body at Berkeley has gone up by 40%. So I wanted to grow our latter faculty. We are now at about 100. We grew at about 30%. And through this growth of the latter faculty, we were also able to use that growth to diversify our latter faculty, which is a really wonderful way to achieve a more diverse faculty. When I started 5 years ago, only 25% of our faculty were women. We're now at 35% women, which may not seem like a big jump to you, but it was really, really important for me to be able to do that. So that's one of the things that makes me that's one of my highlights. Another highlight, and you already heard from Marina on this, is when I joined, we had some very big challenges in general about diversity, apart from the faculty, our student body. We really want the student body to look like the rest of California. California is the most diverse state in the nation. And when you walk across our campus, it doesn't truly reflect the state of California. So what we did is we created the Office of Diversity, Inclusion, Justice, and Belonging. We appointed a chief diversity officer, who's now Edita Batista. She focuses, and her team focuses, on everything from student admissions to alumni programming to the staff experience. Creating that team, growing that team, empowering that team was a top priority in my first term, and it's no less of a priority now. It's an incredible team, and they have done an amazing job. Another highlight is fundraising. As I said before, our endowment, when I started, it's still one of the smallest, if not the smallest, of any top 10 school. But we did manage to double the endowment in the last 5 years, which is very excited about. And in those 5 years, we raised a total of about $230 million, including a $30 million gift from alumnus Ned Speaker, which is allowing us to move to a 4-year program for undergraduates, which will launch our undergraduates farther and faster. We're going to welcome our first group of freshmen in our undergraduate program this fall. The admission rate was 2%. Lower, harder to get into than Harvard or Stanford. I'm happy to report that in general, in fundraising, we shattered all the fundraising milestones from the past. And my chief fundraiser, who's just about to go out the door, Howie, come back. Howie Avery leads that team. And developing alumni relations. And we did, of course, bring in the largest single gift in the history of the school. We raised a lot of scholarships. We now have 50 more scholarships than we had before. And it all told, our fundraising went up by 50% relative to the past. But don't worry, I'm not done yet. So it's been an exhilarating journey. I was a director at the World Bank many years ago, and I was there during the financial crisis of 2008, 2009. And my boss at the time was this amazing gentleman named Justin Yifu Lin, who became famous in China for having literally defected from Taiwan by swimming from Taiwan to China, grasping a basketball to keep him from sinking. So Justin Lin is really an amazing guy, and it was a tough time to be at the World Bank because many of you are too young to remember, but a lot of bad things happened in 2008, 2009. And Justin turned to me, I was his deputy at the World Bank, and he looks at me and he says, in challenge, there is opportunity. And I kind of thought he was being a little bit Pollyannish, right? But I must tell you, the most exhilarating thing about being the dean is having weathered and survived and overcome, let's start with a pandemic, forest fires, floods, electrical shutdowns, student protests, you name it, we've had it in the last 5 years. So we have managed to build our reputation, perhaps, maybe not in spite of, but perhaps because of these tremendous challenges.
Great. Now, what excites you most about coming back from your sabbatical to start your term?
Wow, there's a lot of things to celebrate, Marina. I have to start with the appointment of Rich Lyons as our new chancellor. So that's really amazing. It's so funny, too. Well, funny. I don't know if funny is the right word. Really exhilarating. I was giving a talk at Stanford because, believe it or not, I'm actually really good friends with the dean of the business school there, a guy named John Levin. And the day after my talk, I'm sure I caused this to happen, John Levin was appointed the president of Stanford University. So we now have two former business school deans who are now running these two rival institutions. What does that say about the belief in business as a transformative and positive element in society? I think this is just the best thing ever. So that would be one thing that exhilarates me. Another thing that exhilarates me is actually something that happened 125 years ago. It has taken us 125 years to properly celebrate the woman who started the Haas School of Business, Cora Jane Flood. So if you go outside after we finish pontificating here, you will see there is now, thanks to Tenny and her team, there is now a picture, a plaque of Cora Jane Flood right outside in the courtyard talking about this woman's vision and the generous gift that she gave 125 years ago that started the Haas School of Business. So that's very exciting. And then something else that really, truly excites me, when you were driving here, you might have noticed all the scaffolding in this old, beautiful old building that's a Julia Morgan building, right across from the stadium. That is being transformed into the Haas Entrepreneurship Hub. And that will open in September. That building was created by Julia Morgan, who was the first woman architect licensed in California, and it is beautiful on the inside.
So with all these things that are happening at the school, where would you say Haas is leading the way across business schools?
Yeah, well, before I tell you the area where I think we're leading the way, one thing that really makes me proud is, of course, the U.S. News ranking just came out, and I wish I didn't have to care about the rankings, but I do. And we did incredibly well. We're in the top 7 across all 3 of our MBA programs. How many of you here are from the part-time program, by the way? Oh, quite a lot of you. Number 2, we slipped just a little bit from last year, but we're still number 2 in the country. Full-time went to number 7. But what's interesting is that the U.S. News also publishes the specialty rankings, right? So where we happen to be in the top 4 in real estate. How many of you here are in real estate? Very strong real estate program. We need more people in real estate. Entrepreneurship also. Anyway, we were the only top school that was ranked in the top 10 in all 11 subjects, whether it's finance or real estate or entrepreneurship. So we have the strongest of any school. No other top school was ranked in that many areas across so many different disciplines. So incredibly, that makes me really proud. But the one area I'm really focusing on and where I really think we are now leading the way is in sustainability. I truly believe, and many others do too, and you see it in what you are all doing as our alumni, you are transforming the world through your focus on creating a green planet and fighting climate change. Government is working too slowly to make that transition happen. We need to get to net zero really fast, and it is business that is leading the way. And particularly, California business is doing amazing things as well. One of the things, we've done many things in this area. I'll just mention 2 of them. We just announced a concurrent degree program with the Rausser College of Natural Resources, so you'll be able to get an MBA and a master's, the newly developed master's in climate solutions in 2.5 years. That's a new program that we just announced. And I think it's interesting, Marina talked about how valuable it has been to her to be able to move between business and law. And these kinds of concurrent degree programs, many of which have been created in the last couple of years, we've revived the one with law, which nobody was doing because the 2 schools weren't properly coordinating with each other. So nobody ever got into one program and the other, probably since you did it. So we fixed that. We've also have, of course, this new master's in, you can do a master's in engineering and MBA. And I think these cross-campus collaborations in a school as great as Berkeley are so powerful. And so this latest one with the College of Natural Resources, I'm just so excited. Of course, it's expensive, so we've done a lot. For those of you who are getting the MBA but don't have time or energy or resources to get other degrees, you can now get a certificate in sustainability through the MBA program. We have a similar program for undergraduates, and we're doing incredible work there. Last thing I want to mention in the area of sustainability is our Clean Tech to Market program. How many of you, while you were students here, participated in the Clean Tech to Market program? We have a couple of you. Something we want to expand because it's an amazing program. Clean Tech to Market allows entrepreneurs to scale their clean tech technologies. And companies supported by that program have gone on to raise $500 million over the last 15 years the program's been in existence. And 3 of the companies that participated in Clean Tech to Market were just named by Time Magazine among the top 25 green tech companies for 2024. So very excited about that. Another area I really want to mention, but we don't have that much time to go into it, is focus on the student experience. As a public institution, we have the best faculty in the world. We have recruited and retained faculty from every top school. We are winning every battle. What we want to do is have the same amazing student experience that our private school counterparts have. And so we're working on that very extensively right now. So maybe I'll stop for a second and let you speak, Marina.
So maybe if one of the ways maybe we'll kind of shift a little is when you look out and you see the great community of alumni that we have here, who are connected with the university, who've invested in Haas, maybe what we'd love to hear is what could the alumni do more for the school?
So now I'm going to echo some of the things that Sahar has started telling us about. There's so many ways you can help. I mean, just being here in the room today, that is so great. We are just so great to welcome you all here today. I'm so thrilled that you're here. But we can go into more specifics. There are ways to participate by giving back. You can promote the school and you can engage with Haas, and I'll go through each of those quickly. Let's start by giving back. You can invest financially in the school. This entire campus, in fact, the business school itself, would not be here without privately funded philanthropy. You probably already know that the state of California, when I was a student here, the state of California, 100% supported all activities at Berkeley. Now Berkeley's activities are the state only accounts for 14% of Berkeley's expenditures. So we're essentially becoming a private school, but with many, many, many public sector school restrictions, right? The best of all possible worlds, right? Gifts to the Haas Fund would be wonderful. A number of you today are sporting gold lanyards indicating that you're donors. Thank you. For the rest of you, if you still have time to support us this fiscal year by making a gift online at haas.berkeley.edu. You can promote the school. This is hugely important and will not cost you a penny, will make a huge difference to the school, might take 10 minutes of your time. Which one of the things you can do is respond to ranking surveys, okay? So in particular, if you get a request to evaluate Berkeley Haas from one of the following 4, U.S. News, Financial Times, Bloomberg Business Week, and the Princeton Review, I know it is kind of boring what I'm talking about, I agree. Please consider filling out the survey. In the Financial Times rankings, alumni responses account for 56% of the ranking, okay? So last year, not enough Wharton alums filled out the survey, so Wharton didn't even get ranked in the Financial Times. So it's really, really, really important. Now, we do believe that, and the evidence suggests that more people participate. Generally what happens is schools tend to rank higher. So just participate in those rankings. It will make a huge difference and it will really help the school. You could, other than that, you could refer a student. Send us your talent. We would love to get more Haassies here. Hire Haas. You heard about that from Sahar. Last year we had more than 700 job postings come through our Hire Haas network. Last thing, engage. You can engage by mentoring. You can mentor a student. Be a student always. Take the call when a student reaches out. Attending events. This is so wonderful. We really love for you to keep in touch through that. Attend one of our regional chapter affinity group events that are held around the world. So it's really incredible to see you all here in person. It's so wonderful for this weekend. Please stay close to Haas. Find the most meaningful ways to engage, to promote, to give back. We really appreciate all you do and will continue to do to enrich our school. And finally, go Bears.
Yeah. Actually, we have a few minutes. I think there's one other question that I think people may be really interested in knowing is, what did you do on your sabbatical?
That's such a great question. So deans are expected to continue to do research because eventually they go back to the faculty. You know, very few of them become chancellor like Rich, right? And so we're expected to stay up to date. Well, let me tell you, the last 5 years were not a time when I could stay up to date on my research. There was a lot going on in this campus. And so I took the time to do research, and I just adore research. I mean, sometimes I would be working in these huge data sets. So I have this Orbis data set that I get through my membership in the National Bureau of Economic Research, 800 million firm records that I could access from anywhere in the world. My husband's from the Philippines. I would access it from Manila. I mean, you name it, the country I was accessing. The only place I had a little trouble was in Hong Kong, because it's getting harder and harder to access the internet freely in Hong Kong. But I did data, and sometimes the data work I was doing was so fascinating. I was looking at what's happening to returns to workers versus profits all over the world. Unfortunately, returns to workers are declining to returns to profits. Sometimes I would be so mesmerized that I would work throughout the night coding. And I would look at my watch, and it was like 6 in the morning. I'd been working all night long. So I won't bore you with the details. But one morning I got up. I was in Manila with my 2 kids and my husband. And I was coding at the breakfast table. I had been coding all night, right? And my kids kind of look over, and they're like, "Mommy, what are you doing?" You know, they never seen me code. So I don't know why, since, that's how I got to be a professor, is working with large data sets. So anyway, I'll stop there.
So maybe we have time for 1 or 2 questions, if anybody. And I'll wait for the microphone to come to you.
There's a question over here.
Tanny, over this side.
I'm coming.
Thank you.
Thank you. I just wanted to ask the Dean, in terms of what you mentioned early on about the potentially increasing the size of the student body at the Haas School, I wanted to hear a little bit more about that. Is that going to happen? I don't think it's happened so far, right?
So over the years, well, we have 6 degree programs, right? So we have 3 MBA programs. We have an undergraduate program, MFE program, and a PhD program. Over the years, our MBA programs have grown in size. In fact, our entering classes of the full-time and the evening weekend program were around 250 students each before, and we couldn't grow. And that's one of the reasons we built Chu Hall. So now it's somewhat bigger. It's like 300 students in each graduating class for both the evening weekend and the full-time program. Our undergraduate program is very small. We graduate 400 students a year in a school that has 50,000 students, right? So we did, with this 4-year program, we did double the size of the school. We're not anticipating, I know it's a double-edged sword, right? On the one hand, it's wonderful to have a small program because everybody gets to know each other. On the other hand, we do want to grow, right? And so we will probably do some growth, particularly in the area. There's much more interest these days for shorter specialized degrees. So we may introduce, for example, a master's in management for students who have just graduated from college. That's kind of what we're thinking right now. But this is all very speculative.
Yeah.
I'll make it 4 questions then. Dean Harrison, thank you for everything you're doing. Really appreciate it. In your remarks, you mentioned two things, DEI and climate. How are you standing tall when the outside world, outside of UC Berkeley and maybe California, is going in the other direction on DEI and maybe sometimes even on climate? Because it's going in the wrong direction, and those were two things that you were really proud of.
What a great question. Berkeley has always been at the forefront of change. We see what's needed before everybody else does. So, if anything, I'm doubling down on DEI and climate. But you know, I will give you a more concrete answer. Recently, I was at Dean's meeting at NYU that was convened by the Dean of the Stern School at NYU. So we were maybe, 30 deans from all over the country. And there were deans from the University of Florida and the University of Texas who had been asked to close down all DEI BJ activities, fire everyone by the state legislature. And I was asked by the NYU dean, wonderful guy named Raghu Sundaram, I was asked to talk about how Haas has managed to create a more diverse student body despite the restrictions imposed that we cannot engage in affirmative action. And so I stood up there and I talked about the amazing things we've been able to do precisely because we recruit more diverse students, more diverse staff, more diverse faculty. And in particular, I talked about what really appeals to deans. And I'll tell you, it's being able to recruit the star faculty who then turn other schools down. That's our measure. You know, we're like, sports recruiters, right? And so I listed the 40 or so faculty that I managed to bring in from Princeton, Harvard, Chicago, Stanford, you name it, all the top schools, Harvard, Northwestern. And I was like, those faculty came here because we are so committed to diversity, equity, and inclusion. And that was a convincing argument. So I'll stop there. But yeah, thank you for that question. So it's now my great pleasure to introduce Jan Shelly Brown, who is our conference keynote speaker. So as a partner at McKinsey & Company, Jan Shelly helps financial institutions use technology to propel change and create lasting impact. Her expertise lies at the intersection of digital, technology, risk, and security. She helps chief information officers and senior IT leaders define the business value of technology. She's passionate about leading core technology transformations, including cloud migration, security, agile, and DevOps in highly regulated industries. In addition to her client work, Jan Shelly is active in McKinsey's efforts to advance racial equity and inclusive growth globally. Previously, Jan Shelly was vice president in technology at Goldman Sachs, leading product teams through design and development for the fixed income, currency and commodity, and global security services divisions. Jan Shelly holds a bachelor's degree in computer science from Howard University, and she earned her MBA, go Bears, from Haas in 2014. Please join me in welcoming Jan Shelly back to campus this weekend for her 10-year reunion and to the podium this morning.
Good morning. In this auditorium, thank you for having me. So many friendly faces and my toughest critics in the audience. Today, in atypical consultant fashion, I will not use slides. I was very tempted, to be clear, but I will not. I'll be speaking to you, my alumni and kind of incoming students. I want to take a minute and just salute those of you who've walked these halls before me. Thank you for allowing me to speak here this morning on behalf of this incredible community. And I agree, on one of the most beautiful campuses in the country. To the class of 2014, I salute you. I will tell you that I have probably 100 photos in my photos on my phone because my 2014 class decided to send a flurry of pictures to remind ourselves of our beautiful faces and give pictures of our loved ones. Not that we can ever forget, but it's that type of special moment that I love about my Haas class. To the other Haas alumni, thank you for being here, and thank you for allowing me to spend a few moments kind of celebrating with us in our reunion weekend. To Tenny and the alumni team, thank you for all of the work and for inviting me to be a part of this weekend. So why am I here? When I received an invitation to speak a few months back, I found myself asking this question: why me? Why am I here? And I had a lot of jitters about it. To be fair, I called many of you and asked you the same thing. Because one thing is clear, as Haasies, as a collective, we are very, very impressive. In my class alone, we've got CEOs, we've got CFOs, and we've got leaders driving change in a very incredible way in areas that drive real and sustainable impact, like Gen AI in agriculture. Who knew? And one of the things I love about this group is that we are at the forefront of the next big shift in business. This community provides me with friendship, a safe space for lifelong advice, a sense of belonging, growth, and empowerment. This community has a wealth of knowledge to draw upon, and if I'm being honest, that can be quite intimidating at times. Looking around the room, I recognize that we all have the ability to learn from each other. Student always. Each of us brings unique skills and expertise to this group, making it one of the most competent and confident alumni groups in the country, all without attitude, of course. So back to the question of why am I here? With the support of the remarkable alumni in this room, I feel free to be myself. Initially, I had doubts about why I was addressing all of you, but now I'm going to share my authentic self and speak on every aspect of my identity, representing all of you. I'm Jan Shelly Brown. Now most call me JSB, but that's a story for Henry's later. I'm a Black woman technologist. I'm a mom of 2 boys. I'm a Howard alum, and I am a very proud Haasie. I'm a Trinidadian. I'm a previous tech leader at Goldman, and I'm an inclusive tech evangelist. And it's been a long 10 years since I left these halls. Now I spend most of my time at the forefront of banking and technology. I help large financial services organizations, including CEOs and CIOs, embrace agility to operate like modern technology companies, where many of you spend your time. To bring it to life, most execs now are trying to figure out, how do you deal with generative AI, right? They're trying to figure out how you turn these large organizations and take advantage of new capabilities and new areas to transform themselves. And it's a bit of a race to the finish on this, given to some degree, much of this is going to have a first mover advantage. Integration of AI, it is clear, we all know this, will have tremendous business impact. And if you read any of our McKinsey reports, please do. There will be significant productivity impacts. So I help those leaders try to figure out what are those use cases, how do you think about those solutions, and a fair bit of my time thinking about what is the inherent risk associated, whether those are technical risks like security, privacy, or whether they are things like introducing and increasing bias, right? Using data that is not nutritious. And while I know much of what I do on a day-to-day basis must be thrilling to all of you, and that's why you woke up on Saturday morning to come hear me, or you came in your Uber a couple of minutes away, today I'd actually love to leave you with a very simple message. It's easy, it's an easy one, it's enduring, and it's quite powerful. It's our defining principles. I know, shocker. Questioning the status quo, confidence without attitude, being a student always, and thinking beyond yourself. In all seriousness, while I cannot honestly stand here and say I had etched them in my brain over the last 10 years, or I used them at every single juncture, I do think our defining principles, they're constant. And as I look back over the last 10 years of my journey, and as I think about the leader I am today, and we all are in our respective rights, I think those principles hold true. They still resonate. More so, as I look ahead, I think that they will hold true to the next horizon of our professional journeys, which involves the continued pursuit of progress, not perfection. I'll tell you about two of them. For me, the first was student always. When I left Haas, when I graduated, I had an idea in my head of a linear career journey to professional success. I was in consulting. The world was my oysters. And I thought I'd be serving clients and doing the work I was truly passionate about and coming home to a family that I loved, and it would be amazing. But the hill to get there was tough. And I've had to continuously learn how to do all of these things. Being a student always, I've had numerous pivotal moments that have forced me to reassess and learn and adjust. My 9-year-old Carter was born when we were in San Francisco. And I quickly learned that daycare in California cost as much as my Berkeley tuition. And that traveling and being on the road and the logistics associated without a family unit around us, it was tough. And so we had the bright idea to move to DC. Being a consultant, that was logistically not as tough. And so we wanted to be closer to our family to support us. And I was working in consulting and technology, focused on the public sector in DC, and I have many comments about that. We'll talk about that later. And on paper, it looks great. But in reality, what I don't think I paid attention to is I had spent 2 years before building deep relationships with my Haas community. And I moved to DC, and I struggled. We didn't have friends. We had family, but we had to reinvent ourselves. And I was doing work I was not excited about. And I was anxious. And I had self-doubt. And frankly speaking, I think I suffered through a bit of depression. I was a new mom, and I was, in many respects, and continued to be the only as I adjusted to that community. And I felt incomplete. And what made it worse is I was working really, really hard, long hours, and yet still I was passed over for promotions. And I did not feel like my effort was worth it. And so at that point, probably 3 things. Number 1, I got professional help. I encourage everybody to do it. It's great. Number 2, I took the time off work. I took 6 weeks off, and I collected myself, had a bit of self-reflection. And number 3, I went back, and for those of you who don't know me, I have very strong demands. But I put my demands on the table for sponsors at work on what I needed to be successful. And I'm learning. I'm learning who I am. I'm learning what I need. And I'm learning what it is that will make me and my family successful. And so in that way, that was my moment of being a student always. Today, it continues because my 2 boys are teaching me all the things about new math and Minecraft and figuring out how to be a mom. But it's an example of, over the 10 years, student always is something that continues to persist. Another one about beyond yourself, another principle that resonated. While at McKinsey, I know the dean talked a lot about the importance of diversity. And I remember being at Haas and not feeling like the only, in many ways, because it was a very inclusive community. But at work one day, I remember sitting in a room with my colleagues, and a client walked in. And he said to the room, I need someone who is very technical to come with me to my team, because we are going to be going through, infrastructure topics, and I want someone to be able to connect the dots in those meetings. So he turned to my colleague on my right, and he said, Tom, why don't you join me? Now, on the surface, that's not problematic. However, Tom, in this case, was a poetry major. No offense to anybody who did poetry, but I studied computer science for 4 years, and I built trading systems. And in that moment, it was a look past me, right? And so as I think about that moment, I made a commitment, or shall I say a recommitment, that it is really important that all of us along our journey leave the world better than we met it. And so I committed to, for anyone who is an only, especially in tech and financial service, how do we make it better? I committed to being a mentor, a sponsor, and now at McKinsey, I get to spend a fair bit of my time actually using our Black economic mobility research to think about driving racial impact on a company level and on a society level. And so that was my example of going beyond myself. I know all of you have many identities that will adapt and change over time. And ultimately, these attributes, they influence and shape who we are as we embark on the adventure of life, which includes our career and the many winding choices we will continue to make. It's my belief that we consider the wholeness we all carry and create spaces and opportunities that are inclusive of multiple perspectives and experiences that are present through our journey. I found a quote that I think encapsulates this well. I cannot do all the good that the world needs, but the world needs all the good that I can do. And that was said by Janice Stanfield, motivational speaker and humanitarian. As we go forward in our own segments of society, be it diversity, be it sustainability, be it business, let's all continue to make the commitment to drive towards leaving the world better than we found it, just as we've done in the past, and we will continue to do. Let's listen, create belonging, embody our purpose, and go beyond ourselves. These are two of the principles that for me lay deep in my subconscious and are core to how I live my life and career today. They might not be an apparent realization, but deep down I know they influence my everyday all the time. As I move ahead, these principles have carried me through and will do so in the next horizon. And I'm going to hold them close, and I'm going to teach my kids about it. In the past 2 years, we've experienced a post-pandemic world, a world with wars, the introduction of amazing technologies and business impacts that are changing the way we navigate our daily lives. The world continues to shift, and we will continue to experience disruption. And countless historical moments will continue to occur. And yes, controversies too. But it's us that will shape the world of tomorrow. Creating positive change is something we all aspire to do. As Haas alumni, we are at the forefront of curiosity, exploration, and discovery. Today, I celebrate all of our collective achievements and encourage us to be agents of change here and in all our communities. Continue to ask yourself, why am I here? I guarantee it will bring you the answers for driving the next best ideas forward and together. Thank you. I'm told we have Q&A where you can invite myself or Didine to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you so much. I was wondering, what advice do you give to, you mentioned you do mentoring to your mentees if they run into similar Tom situations? Short-term and long-term, tactfulness, and also how to think about it long-term.
Yeah, it's a great question. I think a couple of things. Number one is you've got to speak up, right? I think in that moment, like the story I shared about the client coming into the room, I wilted into a bit of a wallflower. So I think it is being able to speak up and give words. And now one of the things that we have is a lot more education and fact-based around one of the impacts of diversity and bias. And so being able to correct folks in that moment, because a lot of what we see is, it is not deliberate, people's intentions, it's subconscious, right? So being able to speak up, bring awareness is one of the bigger things that I've learned and I kind of coach folks on. I think the second thing is embracing the fact that you're different, right? In many cases, I walk into rooms and I'm the only, it is the case in most. And so embrace it, hence why I'm wearing a bright yellow dress, right? You just have to lean in. I think we.
Thank you. This was very inspiring. I'm a class of 99, so hello to all of you. My question is with regards to the very, let's say, steep curve that we are seeing in biological, let's say, degradation. So I also find it an issue of actually diversity. You know, we are having it difficult to accept who are different looking than ourselves. How are we ever going to make the leap to accepting that nature is also one of us and we are part of nature? And I'm not an environmentalist per se, but I think we all should become one these days. So I started a foundation last year in Turkey, in Istanbul, and it's taking all my time just to explain that we need a different way of doing things, and mostly focusing on circular economy. So when I was writing my first book on sustainability, I looked a lot into McKinsey reports. At that time, 2018-19, the pandemic came out, but McKinsey was already talking about how AI can be used to include, let's say, iteration for material science, where we can be more knowledgeable about what to use, how to use, and to a lesser degree of making use of these resources. So we are not giving too much pressure to the environment. So many years passed. I'm sure McKinsey is doing amazing things, and you are in the middle of all of these, right? Diversity and technology and digitalization and AI. I just wanted to see how you feel about these issues. So it was a long question, but I just wanted to put into context. Thank you so much.
No, I think it's great.
And congratulations.
Thank you. I think it's great. So, you know, again, not to bore everyone, but I think what we're seeing a lot is in every industry, again, I spend my time in financial services, but in every industry, I think folks are looking at what are the use cases that you might employ AI to, right? But not just like on a point-by-point basis, but how do you transform the way we historically used to take on business processes, right? So when you think of, I don't know, customer service, right? When you think of the way you did sales, how can you end-to-end look at that? And I don't think there's any industry where that is not the case. And so a big part of it is, what do you prioritize? How do you focus? How do you mobilize and go after? And then how do you put those guardrails in place so that you're not doing it in a way that is destructive, but rather in a way that's ethical and responsible? And so that's where I spend. I think the adoption curve is very early, to be clear. But I resonate wholeheartedly, right? The potential is there.
Hi. This question is presumably to both of you. So one was about the fact that in the real world, as we know, problems don't fall into neatly defined categories of, which is how typically education is often organized. So you spoke to some of the interdisciplinary programs, and seems like we need a lot of it, right? Like business without cybersecurity, business without AI, business without understanding all these other aspects in today's world is incomplete. So could you speak to a little bit more about all these interdisciplinary programs that we're trying to kind of foster here?
Thanks for the question. Yeah, I do believe that. And I think that business is inherently very interdisciplinary. I mean, remember, even within Haas, we have many different departments. We have an economics department. We have a management department where most of the faculty are psychologists, PhD psychologists, right? We have operations research. We have AI specialists. So you're absolutely right. We're seeing a lot of, and I'm sure that's also true for you, a lot of the advances are happening across disciplines, and that's happening at Haas, both in a formal sense, in our formal partnerships across the university. We now have them at the undergraduate level. We have a degree in molecular and cell biology and business. We have an undergraduate degree in engineering and business. And you can also do specializations and also the way it's structured at the undergraduate level is your first 2 years, you have a lot of flexibility. So even if you don't do a formal joint degree, you can do it informally. And at the graduate level, we have increasing ones. But if you don't have time to formally do an engineering degree in an MBA or a master's in public health and an MBA, within the MBA specialization, we now have certificates in business analytics and, where you really do a deep dive into AI. We have lots of certificates and possibilities. So absolutely. And I think our students and our alumni who do believe in lifelong learning, I'm sure you're all going to go to a lot of these talks after this. There are lots of opportunities. There are ongoing opportunities for that. And absolutely, it's very important. It's that intersection that's so absolutely critical.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. So to bring it to life, right, and piggybacking on the example you used. So again, I spend a lot of my time kind of thinking about how you transform organizations. And a lot of the times there's the mechanical technology aspects of it. So think Big Bang, a bunch of legacy technology. They are trying to be much more agile on how they do the way they work on their technology kind of infrastructure level as well. One of the things that's often hardest is how do you think about changing minds and hearts? So you think change management, people, psychology, right? Communications, you think about risk, security. So often in reality, a big part of the work we're doing is across multiple disciplines. And how do you bring that to bear as you're making decisions as a business leader, right? So I do see it kind of in the work we are doing as well.
Jan, thank you so much for sharing your story. I am Evening Weekend MBA, actually was a San Francisco evening program, and it's my 35th reunion. There's a few of us here. So I just want to say, I commend you on finding yourself, of understanding who your authentic self is. But looking at back of my 35 years since Haas, getting my Haas MBA, I'm going to ask you, in 10 years, looking forward for you, you said that you really want to be part of making change happen, positive change happen in this world. What do you see yourself doing? How do you see yourself, your career evolving over the next 10 years to really fulfill that promise of making positive change happen in society?
Best question ever. Speculative answer at best. Listen, so I really, really love what I do at McKinsey. I remember joking, Natalie is in the audience, I remember joking with Natalie about how much I love kind of technology, and at the time, how boring that seemed, because nobody was thinking, oh, let's look at application development. Haassies were, but the rest of the world weren't. And so I see myself continuing to do that in a meaningful way, right? So I do know kind of the overarch is going to be within that foray of technology. What that role looks like, I don't know. I do have my eyes on being a senior partner at McKinsey, where I can really shape the agenda. But the world is the oyster, right? What I love now is I get to be able to spend a lot of time with kind of C-level folks and see how they think. So if the right offer comes in to, jump ship, that might be a possibility. But I think it's more the tenets for me. Technology, making sure that I always have a lens of diversity and driving inclusivity, whether that is in my formal remit or not. That will always be a part of it, and making it better than when I left it, right? So what that role looks like, don't know, but I know that will be the overarch.
Hello. I would like to know how you handle the handle the microaggressions, which people don't necessarily know that they're hurting you.
Yeah.
And like in my church, we're trying to figure out a communications program to train people in handling microaggressions. And I don't know if you have found that program that you find particularly helpful. For example, I've thought the Nonviolent Communication by Rosenberg was very useful in terms of you put what you observe, how you feel about that, how
Yes.
that's shaped by your values, and then your request, you know. So you respond rather than react. Do you have any other suggestions in terms of how to handle microaggression and communication skills that you are teaching people in that regard?
I wish I could tell you I had like a great kind of academic learning that I found on this one. But honestly, for me, my style is just directness. I'm a very direct person. And so I've learned to educate myself on understanding kind of what is at the root of driving much of this. And then you're very direct in your communication to respond in accordance, right? So, for example, I would have situations where folks will line up. Let's say we're lining up kind of a speaker conference. And someone asked me one time, hey, you know, we looked at our attendee list of folks who are speaking, and we would like you to speak about this particular, you know, bit of client work we did in Asia, because we looked at our roster and noticed there wasn't a lot of diversity on it. And so I will respond in kind and say, thank you for the opportunity. But in reality, I know nothing about that work done in Asia. You can't just put me on a podium because I'm a woman, right? So I wish I could tell you like a better answer than that. I don't have one, other than you are simply direct, polite, but direct in response.
Hi. Question for Dean Harrison about the MBA itself, and maybe the full-time MBA in particular. There's been some research. I'm right here. Hi. There's been some research that, like, if you don't go to a top 15 MBA program, maybe the ROI isn't there. Some people have said, you know, this model is like meets all the criteria for disruption. And I'm just curious what you're seeing. This is never going to happen to Haas, of course, but I'm curious what you're seeing in the job market for Haas grads, first of all, because it seems like if employers start to lose faith in the MBA, then, you know, maybe this model isn't long in the tooth. And I'm just curious your thoughts on the like viability of the MBA itself.
That is a really great question. I was asking Marina if she wanted to answer it because it was a topic of our board meeting yesterday. It's interesting, the reality is quite different from the speculation. So if you look at the ROI continues to be extremely strong. And students who come to a top 15 school, they're all getting jobs. Some of them, Haasis usually take longer, not because they aren't getting the offers, but because they're very picky about making sure that the job is meaningful and will have impact for them. So they're I would say much more careful and more unconventional, really, often in what they want. So the ROI is still there. However, if you look at just the trends, it's not, the full-time two-year MBA is not a growing market. It's a flat market for the domestic applicants. There are a lot of international applicants who want to come here, and so we are accommodating that. We are getting a higher percentage of international students. But domestically, it is a flat market. That's also reflected in overall demand for college education is somewhat flat in the United States. Partly it's demographics, but partly I do believe that there is an attack going. There is an attack against universities, and it really, honestly worries me. Only 1/3 of Americans get college degrees. If you look at the numbers, it's mind-boggling. It's about 35% of Americans get a bachelor's degree. And let's not even talk about the MBA. There's clear benefits to getting a college degree. But there's starting to be this narrative out there that you don't necessarily need it, it's okay. Well, that's true for your exceptional, Steve Jobs, okay? But for most of the population, if you look at the numbers, you need that degree. And it's true for an MBA from a top program. It continues, the ROI continues to be incredible. There is that narrative out there. It is becoming more expensive. So there are challenges. A lot more people are moving to different modalities. So for example, a lot of appeal to the online market, which is why we launched the Flex program. A lot of appeal to shorter specialized degrees. We don't have a lot of those. We have one, the Master's in Financial Engineering, very, very attractive. If I had to predict where we're going, it would be possibly shorter specialized, not MBAs, but as I said before, Master's in Management. But yeah, there's a sea change. Along with the rest of the world, we are seeing the incredibly rapid pace of change and the move, how tech is changing the world. Ed tech is very important. You probably have a lot to say about that.
Great.
Hello. Hi, Jan. Hi. I really love how you shared your vulnerable stories with us. Coming from the program that we come from, a lot of the time we share our success stories. Can you share an example where your Berkeley Haas community gave you some support to wear your vulnerability as your power?
You mean besides me standing on this podium? Because I will tell you, my community is right there in this corner, pumping me up in this vulnerable moment. But in all seriousness, I shared that story about DC as an example. In all honesty, it was my Haassies that I reached out to. Those within McKinsey, we had a big crew of folks who joined at the same time, who were along kind of mirror paths with me, and who could share where they were. And we had that shared experience that we could work through. And they were the ones who helped me understand kind of my superpower, if that makes sense. They saw me in business school. We went through casing together. We started, in the same intern class and kind of as full-time at McKinsey. And they were the ones I reached out to understand, this whole consulting thing, what is it? What are we doing? And who brought me along the journey, to be honest. I think we're at the last question. Thank you all for having me.